Before we begin, a quick note. The opinions and analysis shared on Truth Seekers are our own interpretations of published research and should not be used as medical, financial, or professional advice. Always consult qualified professionals for decisions affecting your health or well-being.
And with that out of the way, welcome to Truth Seekers. I'm Bill Morrison.
And I'm Alex Barrett. Today is January 9th, 2026, and we're talking about the 91% scare, when intermittent fasting headlines ignored the fine print.
Let's get to the truth.
Right, so March 2024, headlines everywhere, and I mean everywhere, declared that intermittent fasting increased your risk of dying from heart disease by 91%.
91%.
91% if you were eating within an 8-hour window.
And people absolutely panicked. I mean, millions of people do some form of intermittent fasting. That's a genuinely scary number.
It is scary. And I watched people I actually know abandon diets that were working for them, like properly working. They felt better. Their doctors were happy with their numbers. And they saw 91% higher risk of cardiovascular death and just stopped.
Yeah, I mean, when you see a stat like that attached to the American Heart Association, because that's who put out the press release,
It was the AHA, yeah.
it feels authoritative. It feels like settled science.
Wait, hang on. Didn't we talk about this one before?
Huh.
No, I'm serious. The fruit flies episode, wasn't it? The longevity one.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, we touched on it. But that was more about the animal studies contradicting human data, wasn't it?
Right, but we mentioned this study as the flip side, the scary human headline.
Okay, so why are we doing it again?
Because we only spent about 2 minutes on it and people keep asking about it. I've had 3 messages in the last month alone. And honestly, I think it deserves a proper teardown.
Fair enough. It's got enough problems to fill an episode.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Okay, so for people who haven't memorized our back catalog,
All 12 of you.
let's start with what this study actually did. This was an analysis of NHANES data. That's the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey.
Standard observational setup.
Yeah, looking at about 20,000 American adults over a median follow-up of, I want to say 8 years? Let me check. Yeah, 8 years. And they were looking at whether people's eating windows, like how many hours per day they actually ate, correlated with cardiovascular death.
And they found this hazard ratio of 1.91 for people eating within an 8-hour window compared to people eating over 12 to 16 hours.
Right. And that 1.91 becomes 91% higher risk in the headlines.
Which went absolutely viral.
But here's the first thing. Only 414 people out of that 20,000 person study actually reported eating in an 8-hour window.
So that's what, 2%?
About 2%, yeah. And of those 414 people, only 31 actually died from cardiovascular causes during the entire follow-up period.
31 people.
31.
The entire international panic was based on 31 deaths.
In a subgroup of 414. And when your numbers are that small, your confidence intervals get really wide. Statistical noise becomes...
Okay, but here's what I want to know. Who were these 414 people?
What do you mean?
I mean, when I was covering health stories and I'd see a tiny subgroup driving a massive headline, my first question was always, is that subgroup actually representative, Or are we looking at a weird outlier group and pretending it tells us something about everyone?
Hmm, that's fair.
Because that's what jumped out at me. Not even the small numbers, though that's bad, but who actually ends up classified as an 8-hour eater in this study?
Okay, so this is where the methodology gets really problematic. They identified who was in the 8-hour group based on two 24-hour dietary recall questionnaires.
2 days of data.
2 days from the first year of enrollment. And then they use that to classify people's eating patterns for the next 8 to 17 years of follow up.
I'm sorry, what? They asked people what they ate on 2 random days and then assumed that represented their eating habits for the next decade.
That's the methodology.
That's I could have 2 weird days where I skip breakfast and eat an early dinner because I had back to back meetings or I wasn't feeling well, and suddenly I'm permanently classified as someone who practices 8-hour eating.
Yeah,
For 15 years.
for up to 17 years. Yeah. And this is actually in the official press release. Christopher Gardner from Stanford, who chairs the AHA's Dietary Guidance Committee, explicitly said this creates substantial uncertainty in the classification.
That's not uncertainty. That's a completely broken methodology.
Well, I don't know if I'd say completely broken.
Bill.
I mean, it's bad. It's definitely bad. But observational studies always have measurement error. The question is whether,
No, this isn't normal measurement error. Normal measurement error is like, did you eat 3 ounces of chicken or 4 ounces? This is fundamentally misclassifying what people's eating patterns actually are.
okay, yeah, that's fair.
You're not capturing actual intermittent fasting practitioners. You're capturing people who happen to eat in a restricted window on 2 specific days for any number of reasons that have nothing to do with intentional fasting.
Right. And when you look at the characteristics they did report, the 8-hour group had higher smoking rates, higher BMI, and was 3 to 4 times more likely to be black.
Which matters because there are existing racial disparities in cardiovascular risk.
That have nothing to do with eating windows.
Right, those are baseline risk factors that already predict worse outcomes.
And here's what they didn't measure: shift work, which forces people into restricted eating windows and is independently associated with higher cardiovascular risk; job demands, exercise levels, sleep quality, diet quality, like whether you're eating nutritious food or absolute rubbish during that 8-hour window.
So you can't tell if the eating window is the problem or if all these other factors are causing both the weird eating pattern and the cardiovascular deaths.
That's the confounding problem. And there's also reverse causality. If someone already has early heart disease or cancer, they might naturally eat less because they're not feeling well.
So their illness caused the restricted eating.
Right. The study can't distinguish between those scenarios. That's just the fundamental limitation of observational research. You can show correlation, but you can't prove causation.
Which the headlines absolutely did not communicate.
No.
Intermittent fasting linked to higher risk very much sounds like if you do this, this will happen to you.
Yeah. But here's what I think is the most remarkable part of this whole thing. The lead researcher, Victor Zhang, actually said in the official press release,
The same press release the media used.
the same one. He said, and I'm quoting, although the study identified an association between an 8-hour eating window and cardiovascular death, this does not mean that time restricted eating caused cardiovascular death.
He put that in the press release.
It's right there.
The researcher himself is saying, don't interpret this as causal. And the media just, what, ignored it?
Completely. Gardner from Stanford also said the findings need replication and that no specific dietary advice around restricted eating should be given based on this study alone.
So both experts involved in this research were actively trying to pump the brakes, and it got completely steamrolled by the 91% figure.
Well, to be fair to journalists,
Don't.
the 91% is the news. Eating pattern shows unclear association that needs more research. Doesn't get clicks.
I know it doesn't get clicks. I used to write headlines. But that doesn't make it okay to misrepresent what the science actually shows.
No, you're right.
Because this is how you destroy public trust. People make real changes to their lives based on preliminary data. And then when more information comes out, it looks like scientists can't make up their minds.
When really, it's that preliminary, low quality evidence got promoted as definitive.
Exactly.
Although, and I do think this is worth saying, even with all these problems, there is a legitimate research gap here. We don't have long term randomized trials on intermittent fasting. Most studies last a few months, not years.
Okay, but that's a different claim than this study shows intermittent fasting is dangerous.
No, I know. I'm just saying there's a kernel of a real question buried in here.
But do you actually think this study moves us toward answering it?
What do you mean?
I mean, given how badly the eating patterns were measured, given the tiny numbers, given all the confounding, do you think this study tells us anything useful about long term intermittent fasting? Or is it just noise?
I. Huh. That's a good question.
Because I would argue it's actively misleading. It's not just we need more research, it's this specific study is so flawed that it shouldn't inform our thinking at all.
Okay, but here's my pushback. Even flawed studies can point to areas we should investigate more carefully. Like the fact that we're relying on 2 days of dietary recall is terrible. But that tells us we need better long term measurement of eating patterns. The fact that we can't control for all these confounders tells us we need randomized trials. So, in that sense, even a flawed study can be useful for identifying what we don't know.
That's a very generous interpretation.
Maybe, but I think there's a difference between this study proves harm, which is obviously wrong, and this study is so flawed we should ignore it completely. It can be badly done and still point to legitimate unknowns.
Okay, I'll give you that. But then the conversation should be we don't know about long term effects, and here's how we should study them properly, not 91% increased risk.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
All right, so what does the actual scientific evidence say? The stuff that's not based on 2 days of dietary recall.
So we have dozens of randomized controlled trials looking at short term effects, weeks to months. And those consistently show that intermittent fasting can lead to improvements in blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar.
Which are all cardiovascular risk factors moving in the right direction.
Right. Now, those benefits seem to be mostly driven by weight loss and calorie restriction rather than the timing itself.
So, intermittent fasting isn't magic.
It's mostly just a way to control calories. But importantly, none of those trials showed harm.
Hmm.
No randomized trial has shown that intermittent fasting increases cardiovascular risk. And that's the gold standard for testing causation.
So, the higher quality evidence points toward potential benefits, at least short term.
Yeah,
And this deeply flawed observational study is the outlier suggesting harm.
that's the current state of evidence. Yeah.
What about people who stopped intermittent fasting because of these headlines? What should they actually be thinking about?
Okay, so if you're a generally healthy person, you've been doing intermittent fasting, you feel good, your health markers are stable or improving, like your doctor's checking your blood pressure, cholesterol, that sort of thing, there's no reason to panic based on this study.
Because the evidence we do have from controlled trials suggests you're probably fine.
Right. Now, if you have existing heart disease or you're older and at risk for muscle loss, then yeah, talk to your doctor. Those are populations where we should be more cautious regardless.
Which is just reasonable clinical judgment.
Yeah, it's not based on this specific study, it's just general medical caution.
The actual risk calculation isn't 91% higher risk of death.
It's more like unclear long term safety data, but short term evidence looks okay. And if you're healthy and it's working for you, probably fine.
Which is a completely different message than what made the headlines.
Totally different.
You know what this reminds me of? Back when I was covering health stories, there was this constant pressure to have a definitive answer. Readers wanted to know, is this thing good or bad? And we're not entirely sure yet, but here's what we know so far was never an acceptable answer to editors.
Because it's not satisfying.
It's not, but it's often the truth. And I think that's what drives this kind of coverage, the desire for certainty where certainty doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, although I will say, when I was doing A B testing in tech, we had a rule. You don't ship based on one experiment, especially if it contradicts everything else you've seen. You investigate why that experiment gave weird results.
Okay, that's actually quite a good framework.
Right? Like if one test says changing a button color increased conversions by 90%, but 10 other tests showed no effect, you don't immediately change all your buttons. You ask what was different about that one test.
And probably your measurement was broken,
Usually your measurement was broken, yeah.
which is exactly what happened here. The measurement, 2 days of dietary recall used to classify years of behaviour, was broken.
And yet it became the basis for international health advice,
Well, not official advice, but advice in the sense that millions of people changed their behaviour because of it.
which is its own kind of public health impact.
Hmm. Anyway, what were we saying about the broader evidence?
Just that the RCT evidence shows short term benefits, no long term trials exist yet, and this observational study is too flawed to fill that gap.
Right. So the actual science on intermittent fasting is pretty straightforward. Short term studies show potential benefits. Long term effects are still being studied. And if you're healthy and it works for you, there's no reason to panic.
That doesn't make for a very exciting headline, though.
No, but it's accurate. And accuracy matters more than clicks.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
I mean, we're not exactly pulling massive numbers here.
Speak for yourself. I'm very popular.
Are you?
No. But I could be.
Sure.
I could be very popular if I wanted to be.
By lying about intermittent fasting?
I'd be great at it. This one weird eating trick kills you 91% faster.
That's not how percentages work.
Close enough. Right, that's all for today's dive into the data. Just remember, everything we've discussed is our interpretation of published research and shouldn't replace professional medical advice.
Absolutely. If you're dealing with health or mental concerns, talk to your doctor, not just us data nerds on a podcast.
I'm Alex Barrett,
And I'm Bill Morrison
and we'll see you next time.
on Truth Seekers.
Until then, question everything.
But verify with data.